As you saw in the last section, the gorilla experience is the major reason people go to Uganda and Rwanda. But there are some other great things in Uganda and Rwanda that's worth looking at. But firstly, we'll just focus on the details of the gorilla experience. Now, of course, the trek for the gorillas, you need to, in advance, buy a permit. That's the only way you're going to see them. This is to restrict the numbers of people that get to see the gorillas and protect their habitat and their way of life. If it was opened up to just the general public, anybody, anytime, anywhere, they'd quickly tire of us and the whole experience would be ruined. Because of this, you need to obtain a gorilla permit. Now, the gorilla permit does vary in cost depending on the country you go to. It is slightly more expensive in Rwanda than in Uganda. But this is because arguably Rwanda is a far easier trip to see the gorillas than in Uganda. In Rwanda, from the road from the capital, Kigali, it's roughly about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Whereas in Uganda, it can be a full day drive down and a full day drive back. They are increasing the amount of flights in Uganda, and it will possibly even it up slightly. But at the moment, that's the major difference between the two. On average, though, these gorilla permits, because of the size of the amount of people involved with it, will sell out, on average, about 6 months in advance. Therefore, it's recommended that's one of the first things you work on. In fact, it almost may be worth saying, find the gorilla permit you need for the date you want, and then build the trip around that if possible. Now, the gorilla permits aren't cheap. As we talked about earlier, there is a major difference between something being cheap and something having great value for money. It is arguably one of the world's most expensive wildlife encounters. However, it is possibly the greatest value for money wildlife encounter. And that's why people do it twice. Not because of the cost, but because of the value in seeing these gorillas and seeing these animals in their environment without any artifice to it. Now, Uganda and Rwanda is part of East Africa, and it's very, very easy to get from your major entry point of Kenya or Tanzania straight across into Rwanda or Uganda. In fact, you could simply do a 3-day extension to a normal Kenyan or Tanzanian trip and add the gorillas to it. It's highly recommended to anybody going to Africa, particularly East Africa, to add on that gorilla extension. It doesn't add too much in cost and too much in distance or time, but it's well worth the trip and maybe the highlight. Now, we've talked about the gorillas quite a lot. There are a lot of other things to do in Rwanda and Uganda. Uganda in particular is a very big country with a lot of history in it. There is the Queen Elizabeth National Park, another great national park of East Africa, where you can see the Big Five and other animals. Down on the shores of Lake Victoria, of course, you also have Jinja. Now, Jinja is a town that you have community work on one side and some other great activities on the other side. Right on the shores of Lake Victoria, at the beginning of the White Nile, which will run all the way through up into the Mediterranean Sea, you have some of the world's best whitewater rafting, rivaled only, possibly, by the Zambezi River in the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. It's here to have a great time, to scare the pants off yourself, but mix up your African safari with something a little bit different. Uganda has a lot in it. Rwanda has a lot of history and it's an amazing country to visit. So I always think it's great to go for the gorillas and stay for the extras.